Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Magduit and we're here again with another awesome Ableton 12 rack. I guess I should say Live 12, but we all call it Ableton, don't we? I mean, like, I know I call it Ableton. But yeah, so I'm very excited for this week's. Really tried to go far into the reaches of sound design things and understand more about kind of delay-y, flangey sort of feelings. And I'm really excited. So let me just show you what this sounds like, and then we're going to get into what the rack is and how it works. So yeah, here we go. All right, word. So yeah, the rack for this week is called Magduit Rang, and the idea of this rack is to allow oneself to create these very flangy, almost reverberant tails off of whatever it is you throw into it, but obviously still maintain a lot of the dryness from the original sound, and it has this very unique timbre that I think sounds really cool. So let me first go into the two different buses that I have here. So the first bus that I made is this kind of color bassy sort of vibe with the 9th resonator that I put out a few weeks ago. And the idea here was to utilize the Magduit Rang and then put it into this so that the tails that you're hearing are very like colorful and melodic in nature. So let's go over all the different knobs here. There's quite a few knobs. Let me create a new track. And I'm just going to get a stock operator, if I can find it. Oh, can't spell here. There we go. And we're just going to change this wave shape from a sine wave. We're going to change that to a square wave. Let's just do like square D for D's nuts. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, here we go. Maybe add a little pitch bend to it. Yeah, cool. So square, nothing too crazy going on there. I think we've all heard a square wave before. Let's go ahead and put the Rang on here. Oh, by the way, I am gonna mention, as usual, the default preset, if you will, of the Rang will be on this little white track right here, stock Rang, and it'll be right here. And if you want to save it, you just click on this little save button here. If you guys do need me to help you go over how to install the ALP file, I can help with that in the future. Just put a comment or something and I'll make like an individual video on how to install an Ableton ALP file, but it's pretty straightforward. And I did go over that a few weeks ago in one of my videos, so I can make an individual video later if you guys feel like you need that. So how does this work? All right, what does this even do? I'm going to show you. So first off, I'm just going to go over this knob because I'm just going to put it on full wet for now. But the classic dry wet knob, we all know what that does. All the way to the left means you're just hearing the original sound. And then if it's all the way to the right, you're hearing the Rang sound. Now, obviously, depending on what you're putting into this, it will sound vastly different. But I'm just going to start with a square wave just to show you what you can get out of a really simple sound. Let me just also make sure to turn all these off. Okay, and then let's just turn off these compressors. Make sure that there's nothing on anything. There we go. All right. So the first knob is probably one of the most important knobs. This is going to decide the delay time of that ringing that you're going to hear in the sound. So All the way to the left means that the delay time is going to be very short. All the way to the right means it's going to be really long, and it's going to ring out for a very long time, even if you hit it for a really short duration. Pretty cool. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but it's probably the most important knob. There's a couple of other knobs I'm going to go over, but that are also important. But a lot of these are going to be to taste. Some of them you may not even need at times. Like some of these that I added, like the soft clip dry wet and the reverb dry wet, are very to taste, but I'll go over those knobs soon. But yeah, long story short, there are a couple knobs that are really important to the sound. So that's the first one. The second knob is also really important to the overall sound. This is going to be the frequency of the bandpass filter of the delay. So this frequency knob and this Q knob are both really important. They both belong together. So by default, the Q is going to be very high, which means it's going to be wide, and if you're looking at the shape, it's going to be here, I'll show you. I'll show you exactly what I mean, because I think it's also important to learn what a high Q value versus a low Q value means. So if we have this EQ curve here, imagine it's a bandpass. In fact, we don't even have to imagine. I think there's a way to do that. Okay, there isn't, but that's fine. So basically it looks like this, except it goes all the way down to negative infinity. And this is what that means. Wow, that's interesting. So I guess it's inverted on this. In fact, let's just open this up so we can, because I'm curious. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. Oh, because it's determined as width, not Q, but it's essentially the Q value. So a high width would be a low Q value. But yeah, so anyway, you're turning up the width, which as you can see here, makes this shape either larger or smaller. So if it's larger, it means you're going to be letting more frequencies in. If it is lower, it means you're going to be letting less frequencies in, and it's going to create more of a bandpassy feeling. Now let me delete this EQ because we don't need that anymore. And let me show you what I mean by this knob being important. So this frequency is going to adjust the frequency of that band, and you can see that here. So if I automate through this, you can get a very interesting sort of whoosh feeling. So it's just a classic kind of bandpass feeling, but it's in the delay. So what ends up happening is so you can create this really interesting movement inside of the ringing noise. So sometimes you can let in more low frequencies or high frequencies depending on where that's located, and I would highly recommend automating this while you're designing these sounds. This one you can also automate, but usually it depends. It's more of a taste thing, but yeah, definitely have fun automating this second knob here. So yeah, that's what the second knob does, just moves from the low frequency to high frequency of this filter here, and that's what allows you to create these very interesting bandpassy delayed timbres. So the next knob, corpus tone hertz. What does that mean? Well, luckily it is a little self-explanatory, but we're going to go over this. So corpus is I don't know, a stock plugin, I guess is the technical term, in Ableton that lets you emulate a certain type of feeling or shape or tonality of real life things that you might experience, like a wood block, or in this case, a tube. And what's cool about this is it lets you create a more tonal delay. So what this knob lets you do is it lets you choose the hertz value for that delay and essentially create an even, I would say, grittier and more flangey feeling sort of delay. And depending on where you have this corpus dry wet knob, that is what determines how much of that you'll get. So you can have this turned up pretty high, and so you can hear how it's changing the tone of the delay. So if we so this is without it. And this is with it. So without it, you do lose a lot of that metalliciness that I really wanted to get out of this plugin, or rack, I should say. Now, you can still have a lot of fun with this filter without it, but obviously with it, that's where you get almost all of that timbral wackiness. Obviously, feel free to go in here and explore some of the settings. One of the big settings that I don't have hooked up to a knob but would be fun to explore is switching between all these different settings here. So by default, it's going to be set to tube, but feel free to play around with marimba or beam, or in fact, yeah, what does marimba even sound like? So yeah, you can see how things get a little bit crazy. Let's go back to tube. But yeah, so that is the corpus tone hertz. That's going to let you change the frequency. I would highly recommend either doing it by ear, which is what I would probably do, or if you want to get a little bit more precise and mathematical, you can just look up what each of these hertz frequencies end up being as a note, and then decide, you know, I want it to be 30 hertz or whatever, for whatever reason. So yeah, the delay filter Q we kind of went over. That's just going to adjust the Q value of this filter. The corpus filter frequency, this is going to adjust what the tilt of the shape of the EQ that the corpus is listening to. So what all of that means is, do you want it to feel darker if you go to the left, or do you want it to feel brighter going to the right going into corpus? So I'll show you and demonstrate what that means. So you can hear to the left, it's a lot darker, meaning we're letting in more of the lower frequencies and cutting out some of those high frequencies. And to the right, we're making it brighter. So yeah, pretty cool. Corpus width, pretty self-explanatory, but this one's important to go over. This just lets you get that corpus feel sitting in the mix where you want it. So obviously the more width, you can hear the very wide corpus sound, or if you want no width, it becomes very centered. Pretty cool, pretty cool. This thing is so fun to play with. Global width, that's pretty standard on a lot of my racks. It just lets you make everything sit where you want it. So you just add even more width or reduce some of the width in a more tasteful and controlled way. Mono low end, as per usual. Mono's the low end. So if you want, like, you know, if you have a sub that's going through this and you have low frequencies that are existing inside of all of this, that will help mono those. One thing I've learned about the mono low end curve, because this is just using a utility, I believe. Yes, it is using a base mono utility. So one thing that's really important that I have learned recently is that the base mono utility has a very like soft shaped high pass, meaning if we were to go to an EQ here, just because I want to show you what I'm talking about, and put on a high pass filter, it's going to have kind of this shape rather than this 4x Q value. And because it has this shape, you may have to actually turn up the value quite high in order to get the results that you're looking for in the lower frequencies. So what I mean by that is, I don't know, let's say you have a frequency at like 200 hertz and you want that to be mono. I would say you should go all the way up to almost 400 hertz to really achieve that goal. It's just something I've been learning about the mono low end inside of utility. So just keep that in mind. It's a very soft mono low end. So sometimes you may need to be more aggressive with it. Something that you can always do is just check the correlation meter on side of a plugin or inside of a plugin like Span, which is free from Voxango. I highly recommend that one. And then you'll know, like, is my correlation so bad that I need to do a lot more of this? A good example is I can show you actually exactly what I'm talking about, because why not? I think it's important to learn. So if I have Span here, down here you have a little correlation meter. So if you don't have any issues with the phase, it'll look like this. It'll have like this meter will be all the way to the right. So you can see here how I increased the width, the correlation went down. Now what's interesting is I actually don't know how to change this from all of the frequencies to just the low frequencies. So I think it's always going to check the metering for everything. Well, if you have any sort of metering software as well, it should show you the sidebands. I'll have to figure out if there's a free one that works well, but I have been using mini meters a lot for this. So, which is not free, it's $10, but it's worth it. Because whatever I will do with sideband information, so I can see the sideband information, and then when I high pass it, it's gone in this little. So like I know now that in my, what is this? This is like 43 hertz. In my 43 hertz range, I know now that there's no side information. So that's something that I have been doing to make sure that my low mids or my lows are sitting where I want them to in the stereo field, which is usually non-existent. But yeah, it's just some stuff to keep in mind. So that's what the mono low end does. Sorry for that little rant slash detour. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that it's not as aggressive as you might think. All right, so the delay, dry, wet, pretty straightforward. A lot of these are actually like really straightforward. So the delay, dry, wet does exactly what you would think. So it takes this delay and allows you to mix in some of the dry signal. So you still get the original sound. Same with a lot of these. Now the flanger is a pretty fun one. So the flanger is just a frozen flanger here, and I have found that it adds a lot of interesting dynamicness to the just that feeling. I shouldn't say dynamicness. It adds like another layer of that watery, almost delay sort of feeling to whatever it is that you're putting through it. So you can hear with it. If you do want to go in and mess with this, you can always increase the frequency. You can also switch it to a rate, so you can have it set to like 1, and then it'll add a lot of movement. I only had so many knobs here, so that's why I wasn't able to add it, but it's just something to know. If you do want to go in here to the phaser and mess around with that, you can. But yeah, that's the dry wet for the flanger, not the phaser. It is a flanger. The next dry wet is the corpus. Obviously, if you have it all the way off, you just have no corpusy. Which is still pretty freaking cool. But I do think that the corpus adds like a majority of the feeling. Well, I shouldn't say everything combined is what really creates the feeling, but the corpus is a big component of that. But I still allow you to make it as dry or as wet as you would like. So that can be helpful for sound designing. You never know how much or how little of the corpus that you want. The soft clipper. So this was something that I wasn't sure I wanted to add until I had added it, and I just felt like it sounded so cool. So glue compressor, as we all know, has a soft clipper switch, and I feel like at times it is super nice to have that option to just feel a little bit of that almost controlledness to the sound that you're putting through, especially if it's really loud. And the glue compressor from Ableton is, I don't know if it's notorious or infamous or just famous for its ability to sound really clean and nice. So it just makes things so loud. So it's pretty fun. Definitely just put that in there because I felt like having something to just increase loudness is always a good thing. The chorus. So the chorus knob is pretty straightforward. I just have a classic chorus going on here. And I did want to point out that you can adjust the low cutoff for the chorus. By default, I think it was at like 44 or something. I had it pretty low by default, but I just wanted you all to know that if you do want to high pass it, you can go in here to the chorus ensemble and high pass it a little bit more if you want to take out some of those low end frequencies. But yeah, it's just a standard chorus. I find that the chorus is really helpful for this kind of a sound. It adds a lot of width and depth to the stereo image, which I think is what lets this sort of feeling be so interesting and fun. But yeah, obviously you can turn that off all the way to the left. If you want a little bit, you can dry wet it, so that's why that is there. Yeah, the reverb, once again, this is just something that helps create an entire vibe very quickly, so you don't need to go out and like find a reverb to put into, you know, this track and then, you know, mess with it that way. Unless you feel like doing that, you can. But this reverb is before both the glue compressor, which has the soft clipper, and the OTT. So it's before the distortion, if you want to call the soft clipper distortion, and it's before the OTT. So you end up getting a very reverberant feeling, and it's also a loud reverberant feeling, which I think is good for this kind of sound. I did spend some time tweaking a lot of the stuff in here. You can go in and mess with it however you want, but I definitely found some settings that I thought were really cool and interesting. So the idea is you just can dry wet it and the reverb should work. You know, like you don't have to go in too much if you don't want to get a cool feeling from it. But if you do, you can. So you can hear it adds a lot of room, it's a plate reverb, so it's very timbrally chill. Like it doesn't add too much craziness, but I think it does seem to feel nice. Like it adds a lot of space. And then last, we got the OTT. Everybody knows what that does, but I'm going to go over it again. Just brings up a lot of levels of things that are quiet, brings down some levels of things that are a little bit too loud. I am a massive fan of OTT and have been for a while. It's just a great thing to put on stuff, especially in a lower percentage. You'll usually see me ending up at around 30% or something around that area. But you can do, so you can see without it, it's pretty cool, but with it, even at the higher values, it starts to clean up some of those sounds and you can really hear that ring out. Anyway, so yeah, that is Magduit Rang. I'm pretty excited about this one. It's a little bit weirder than some of the stuff I've been putting out recently, but I am loving it. It's a very fun way to create delayed feelings that are tonal, and I think it also is a very iconic sort of feeling that I've seen used in a lot of different types of sounds. But yeah, it's also pretty heavy and fun. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it wasn't too long and too weird. I kind of went fast, wanted to get through it and show you guys so that way you too can have fun and play around. Just a couple of quick reminders. Definitely don't forget this little knob right here. Make sure that Q value is where you want it. And yeah, the delay time. I haven't tried automating this yet, but I think it can be really fun to automate. Just getting out of control. But yeah, let me see and or hear what you guys can come up with this. I am always looking forward to hearing what is created with some of these racks. And in the near future, I'm going to be putting out a video with the sounds and like showing off some of the cool things that people have made. So if you guys do want to email me a link or something like that, or even the sound itself, to MagduitLink at gmail.com, then yeah, feel free to do that. That's MagduitLink at gmail.com. I'll have the link and or the email for that in the description. So yeah, it'll be there with the Patreon link. And yeah, as per usual, this will be free coming out today. So yeah, I hope you guys had a wonderful week, and I look forward to the next week. So yeah, keep making music. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.